So Ephesus is one of the major cities in the Bible. As a matter of fact, one of the letters Paul wrote was to the Ephesians. So this is a major city. It's a huge city, very, very productive city. Um, and they had theaters. They had all the stuff that you would expect to have with a big city. And Ephesus is mentioned several times in the Bible as being around. But the inscriptions that they found, one in particular was interesting to me. There's the major center of worship and the Temple of Artemis. That's all been documented that it's there. But the big ones, those seem to be. I mean, they're interesting to have those, but when they go into little detail, like this one that I'm going to talk about, the little detail seems like something even more interesting to me because the Temple of Artemis had been there for a long time. There's books written about it. Very famous place. And if you're writing it later, you maybe could figure out that Temple of Artemis was there then. But this thing about when Paul came into town, he started talking about the fact that these little idols that they were making, these pagan idols of Artemis. We don't go into what Artemis looked like. It's almost, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that.
Talismans or something.
Yeah. And Paul said, why are you doing these things? God doesn't live in little temples like this. And the guild got pretty mad at him because he started affecting their sales. But the interesting part is that the Bible mentions this guild. It talks about it, and there's a inscription, and 3rd century Greek inscription, 16 lines, confirming the ongoing silversmith guards and Artemis veneration, and it's 100 years after Paul. So that's a little detail that if they're picking this thing up later and talking about it, how are they going to know about this guild that's around? The only one that knows about these things are some of the only ones that are actually making it. But when the document's written and Paul mentions small details like that, I find that to be very convincing because it's not something that if you're going to make it up, you're going to know anything about this guild. If you didn't go there and have this thing actually happen to you,
Right.
But interesting after this also is the fact that Paul went to this place called Tyrannus, a lecture hall, and was owned by this guy named Tyrannus. And it's mentioned in Acts 19:9, and where Paul went in and taught for a couple of years. Well, I did a little research on this lecture hall, and what was interesting about this lecture hall was this was a protected place for debate, and Paul, after being beaten up and all the rest of it, went there for a couple of years. Not surprising. He could actually go someplace where he could actually talk to people and not get stoned over it. So that's kind of what the Tyrannus part was. I think Paul went there just because he said, okay, I can go here. I can talk to people about God and not have rocks thrown at me. Just seems like an interesting spot. But they have found archaeological evidence of it. The Australian Archaeological Institute uncovered a fragment of Greek inscription talking about this place. They use some interesting words there that I can't pronounce. But anyway, it's basically saying that Tyrannus was the owner of this, and he was a person that spoke a lot, an orator that spoke a lot about it. So yeah, anyway, I thought that Ephesus they found a lot of the details that are mentioned in the Gospels about it, and in Paul's visits as well, but not the Gospels, but Paul's visits. And then also this idea that the fallen from heaven. I was kind of interested in that. What can you tell us about that, Jay?
Well, this has to do with this goddess Diana.
Yes. Okay.
And this is where the city clerk was talking about trying to calm the crowd down because they were all yelling for 2 hours, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians."
Mm-hmm.
And this is from Acts 19, chapter 19, verse 35. And when the city clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, "Men of Ephesus, what man is there who does not know that the city of the Ephesians is temple guardian of the great goddess Diana and of the image, and of the image which fell down from Zeus?"
Yeah.
So there was some historical event in that city where they believed that an image of the goddess of Diana had come down to them from the heavens.
Yeah. More pagan stuff. Yeah.
Right, and it was an event, or at least a fable,
Mm-hmm.
and all the details I think have been lost to antiquity.
Right. But it mentions that fact as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Um,
Well, and I think it's important too because Paul was able to do quite a bit of success. Because if you look at this on this Tyrannus thing, and this is Acts 19, verse 10, it says, "And this," meaning his teaching, "continued for 2 years, so that all who dwelt in Asia heard the word of the Lord Jesus, both Jews and Greeks." And so this was fundamental to the spread of Christianity in Asia and certainly in the world, that
Yeah.
he was able to have 2 years of ability to show people how the Old Testament was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. I mean, this is apologetics at work for 2 years
yeah.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was able to actually get his points across. And this was apparently a major place of learning. This was a site of learning for the Greeks, and a lot of Greek people came there to this spot because well known, well documented. And like I said, you could go there, you could speak, and nobody's going to try to kill you, like Paul had experienced along the way. Maybe when it came there healing, and maybe had some of the scars still left from him, and that fact that he was stoned to death and he came walking back in, that may have spread around. So Paul may have had some notoriety in getting people to come and listen to him.